Hey y'all, welcome to Kamira's Kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make a moist sweet potato pound cake with a maple rum caramel glaze, all topped with some pecans. Now this is a delicious pound cake, and you know what, you may as well give me a like and a comment of praise, because I'm telling you, when you make this cake for your family, you ain't gonna tell nobody where you got this recipe. You gonna take all the praise for yourself, honey, because this cake is incredible. So go ahead and give me my little, give me my flowers, okay, while you are on this video, okay, while I yet live. Amen. So I have went ahead and I have roasted up 2 large sweet potatoes on about 375 degrees for about an hour and a half. Now you want to make sure they are very soft and tender, and I'm going to peel off the skin as well as take off the ends because I don't want to get any of the strings. I'm going to use a hand mixer to go ahead and beat these sweet potatoes. If there are any strings in your sweet potatoes, you need to just rinse those strings off of the beaters. Thankfully, these sweet potatoes actually weren't very stringy at all, okay? Now, you're looking to get about 2 cups of sweet potatoes, and you're beating them because you want them to be super smooth when they go into the batter. Now, I'm putting y'all on game today, so listen closely, okay? One of the main reasons why people have a dry cake is because they use way too much flour. And they do this because they scoop their flour straight out of the bag. That flour is compressed. And if you scoop it straight out the bag like I have done now, you will be getting about 152 grams of flour. Now, 1 cup of flour actually weighs 120 grams. Now, I'm going to show you guys all of that extra flour you'll get if you scoop it straight out the bag. Look at that. Now, imagine you did that 3 times. You're going to end up with about 3/4 cup of extra flour in your cake. So get a scale and measure out your flour. You need 360 grams. And I promise you, this is super easy and it guarantees your cake is going to come out right. Now, into my flour, I've already added my baking soda and baking powder, and I'm going to put in some cinnamon, some nutmeg, and some salt. This is all of our dry ingredients, and I'm going to go ahead and mix this together. No sifting necessary. I have 1.5 cups of brown sugar and 1.5 cups of white sugar, okay? I'm using some vanilla as well as some rum, and you got to use the rum. The rum is one of the key flavors in this. I have 4 eggs that were room temperature and also 2 tablespoons of buttermilk, okay? It's a little bit of buttermilk, but I promise you it's going to make all the difference. In my mixing bowl, I already have 1 stick of unsalted butter and 1 pack of cream cheese that have been salted. Now you're going to beat this cream cheese, butter, and this sugar together, okay, like it done stole your lunch money. Pow pow, okay? You gonna beat this, all right, like it done went and called your mama buck tooth and ugly, all right, because I'm beating it at high speed, and we're going to be beating this for about 7 to 10 minutes, all right? Now, you have to do this because if you don't do this, your cake is not going to rise and have the correct texture, and you need to do all this beating before you add in the flour, because once you add that flour in, okay, see, the flour like the big bully on the block, okay? You can't beat that, because if you beat that, your cake gonna get tough, okay? So I'm gonna scrape down the sides as needed, and then I'm gonna start incorporating the eggs. I'm putting in about 1 egg at a time, and I'm going to beat it for 30 seconds between each time I add the eggs. Yes, you do need to do it a full 30 seconds. Trust me, you want this cake to come out right. Okay, now go ahead in the comments and let me know what other desserts you would like to see or any other recipes that you would like to see on this channel for the holidays. Now, on my last egg, I'm going to put in a teaspoon of rum extract, and I'm also going to add in a tablespoon of vanilla. Now, I know I'm not using a measuring spoon, but trust me, I've been baking for a minute. I'm using a tablespoon, okay? And then I'm going to beat in this last addition very well. At this point, we're going to go ahead and add the sweet potato, because you want to put all of this in before we start to incorporate the flour. And this sweet potato is going to ensure that your cake is very, very moist. It is almost incredibly moist for a pound cake, and it has a great texture. Now you might start seeing some little pilling or like splitting, that separating, that looks like it's happening in your batter. And this is just because we've been beating that cream cheese so much. It's going to start looking like it's splitting. But look, don't worry about that, okay? It does not affect the taste, honey, okay? It's going to still turn out all right, because when we add in the flour, and I'm adding half of the flour one time, you know, it's all going to come together. I am beating this at the lowest speed, like 1 or 2 on the mixer, because as I told you, flour will lock up on you. Okay, it's gonna toughen up your cake, the gluten in there, and you don't want to do that. So just beat this slowly, and even sometimes I stop and I just fold it in the rest of the way, because you just don't want to overdo it. Now, in between adding the flour, I'm putting in the 2 tablespoons of buttermilk. You could also just use a little bit of whole milk, and I'm going to mix that in. This is the last addition of the flour, and on this one, guys, I really just did a lot of folding because I didn't want to overwork it. And y'all, trust me, this batter is thick with 2 C's, honey. This batter has been raised on collard greens, mashed potato, cornbread, and ham hock. That natural thick, okay? I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a trick on an easier way to flour your bundt pan. Now, y'all know this is my old reliable bundt pan. And when you are baking for the holidays, or when you baking and you know you want it to come out right, you know you got to bring your old faithful. Okay, that's like Betty Lou bundt pan, the one that you know gonna do right. Okay, so I'm buttering it down good. And instead of dumping in the flour, I have started shaking out my flour into this little sifter thingy. I actually use this to clean my oil when I am frying, but I'm using it for this because I have found that when I do this, it puts on a nice light coating of flour. I waste less flour, and actually the cake looks nicer because I don't have like an extra thick crust of excess flour on my pound cake. So I'm just gonna dust it in, and you guys will see how little flour I actually have to put into this pan to flour this cake. When I was done flouring this cake, guys, look at the little bit that is left. That is hardly nothing. And that's all I have to knock out of the pan because I did this little technique. If you try this technique, let me know how it goes for you in the comments. All right, now it's time to add our batter to the pan. And you're just going to have to resist eating all of this batter, okay? Because this cake batter actually tastes really, really good, okay? It's really delicious. So make sure, look, don't overdo it, okay? Because you got to get some, you got to actually bake the cake. I'm going to smooth this out, and I've had my oven preheating at 350 degrees, and I'm going to bake this anywhere from 70 to 80 minutes. My cake was actually ready at 80 minutes, and I just stuck a toothpick in it, and I saw that it was fully cooked. Now I'm going to let this cake start to cool in the pan while I toast some pecans for the topping. You can use as many pecans as you want, but I'm just using 1 cup today. I'm going to lightly toast them on medium heat for about 5 minutes. I'm going to allow them to cool just a little bit, and then I'm going to give them a nice rough chop. I ended up with a little bit extra, about 1/4 of a cup extra pecans. So you really could use about 3/4 of a cup. When that's at the side, let's go ahead and start on this delicious caramel. Now, it's important you use salted caramel because there's a lot of sugar in here, so you need to balance that. I'm adding 1 cup of brown sugar, okay, to my 1 stick of butter, and I have this at medium heat. One thing you don't want to do with this mixture is let it start to just bubble out of control. You got to watch it, or else it's going to start, it's going to crystallize on you, okay? I'm adding in now some maple syrup and also some heavy cream, a little bit extra salt for a little extra flavor. I'm going to mix this together, and I'm going to allow this to sort of melt together with some of those caramel baking bits. Most of the time people use those for caramel apples, but I promise you this ties the whole flavor together. Once everything has thoroughly melted and looks something like this, I'm going to put in about a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and a teaspoon of the rum. The rum is so key. And I have turned the heat off at this point because you don't need it anymore. I'm going to mix this together, and then I'm going to take my cake out of my pan. I did slide a knife around this, but honestly, you didn't even need to do that. This cake honestly just slipped right out, and using the technique that I did with the flour, there was not a heavy crust on the cake either. It was just so nice and easy. All right, so this cake looks amazing, but I do want the other side to be showing. And y'all, I got a fancy cake stand today. All right, I'm bougie. Okay, I'm bougie, amen. So I'm gonna flip it over. And look at this beautiful cake. Now, my caramel is still warm, and I'm going to give y'all another tip. I'm just giving y'all all the tips today, okay? I am going to poke this cake with a toothpick. And while the caramel is still warm, I'm going to put on about, half of the caramel, because at this point, the caramel can start to seep into the cake a little bit in those holes that I have poked. Now, once I do this first round of glaze and I let it sort of seep into the cake, I'm going to let the caramel cool. So about 30 minutes later, after I do this first glaze, I'm going to come back and I'm going to glaze the cake again, because at that point, the cake is going to be totally cool. And the glaze is going to be thicker, and you're going to be able to get more of the glaze to stick onto the top, and less of it will slide off. But this first round of glaze is going to seep in and give your cake a nice, rich, caramelly flavor. Do this tip. I promise you, your cake will be so good. And then I'm going to put on some of the reserved pecans, because I didn't add all of them to the caramel. And I'm going to put a little bit of that extra glaze to make sure it gets in the middle. Now, once it's fully glazed, this is what it looks like. Divine. Guys, you will love this cake. Please share this with some friends and some family. Don't hold this all to yourself. Show someone that you love them. And if you'd like to make any more of my pound cake recipes, go ahead and check out my pineapple pound cake as well as my peach cobbler pound cake. Those recipes are spot on as well. Now, once I cut myself a slice, I actually like to add on just a little bit of that reserved caramel right on the top of that pound cake slice. You can even top it with a little bit extra pecans to get your slice right. Yes, guys, I just hope you know that I love you and God loves you, and I'll see you next time on Kamira's Kitchen. Goodbye, guys.